Hi, I'm Ian Woodruff, and this is the last of a series of videos to help you with your leadership development plan. In this short video, we're going to talk about techniques you can use to ensure that your plan is a good one, and also talk briefly about the 2-minute video recording that's required as part of the submission. Let's tackle this report in its two components, the written report and the video, and we'll start now with the written report. As you know, it's 1,400 words. And there are some critical things about the report that we've got to ensure happen. The first thing is have a look at the rubric, go to My RMIT, look at the course guide. The rubric actually tells you how we're going to assess you. It tells you what should go into the report and what marks are available for various aspects of the report. So first step, go to the rubric, understand it, use that as a framework or a scaffolding for the draft of your report. We've asked you to develop a leadership plan. So you need to talk a little bit about the development, where you think development needs to occur, why. We're also asking you to justify your choice of ideas and concepts in your plan. So there's kind of two aspects of, yes, here's my plan and here's why I think it's relevant or appropriate or why it's going to work. We often tell you as students that you must write in the third person, that it's unacceptable to use the word I. For this assessment task, forget that. It's all about you, so I is important. I believe that to be a better leader, I need to do the following. It's perfectly okay and quite appropriate to use first person. Some students have said to me, I'm worried I can't fit all I want to say into 1,400 words in my report. I'm afraid that's life. It's a good skill to develop, to be concise. We can't change the word limit, so that determines how you approach the task. If you're a very wordy kind of person, think about diagrams and tables as an alternative. You can get a lot of content into a table and a diagram, and that might help you cut down your words. But 1,400 is the limit, and it's a skill to develop. Some students say, I want to add appendices to my report. Do they count in the word count? Two things. No, they don't count in your word count, but don't add appendices just because you can. We don't routinely read appendices. We want to see your leadership report described in the main body in the 1,400 words. If you really feel it's essential to have an appendix or appendices, think about why you need that. Is it something extra detail that you can't add into the report? Does it give further information about a concept? Or can it simply be replaced by citing a reference? So appendices not required and not desirable unless they're adding something specific to your report. Now we need to consider referencing. We've said in the course guide that you need 14 references. I think somewhere else we said 12, but that was wrong. It's 14 references. So where will you obtain these references and how will you use them? Now, I'm not going to spend any time talking about how to reference. There's a lot of information about that on My RMIT, and you've all done this before. So ensure that you comply with the referencing style, but we won't address it any further here. We'll talk instead about what kind of references might be relevant. Now, if you're talking about different leadership theories and you've found one that seems to be just you and it's appropriate to develop, then you're obviously going to want to cite something about that style. So let's say, for example, you're looking at charismatic leadership and you think that that's the kind of thing you want to get engaged with. If you write in your report that I need to develop my charisma to be a better or more charismatic leader, we'll be looking for a citation to an article that's been written by an expert about charisma or the impact of charisma on leadership or the impact of charismatic leadership on effectiveness. So somewhere we need a theoretical underpinning of the claim, the statement, the idea that you have. We've said before that this leadership development plan is quite a practical assignment. It's unlike some others where you're simply writing an essay. Because of that, some of your references will probably be practical. So it may be that you've accessed an article that talks about the process of assessing your own leadership styles, traits, characteristics, or you've gone to a website that allows you to do that. They're fine to use as references. Again, think about the quality of the source you're using, and if it's quite reputable, then it's a perfect source to use and to quote as part of the practical component of your leadership development plan. One word of advice about something you should not do, and that is don't parachute a reference into your paper once you've written it. And by this I mean you often read a student paper and The paper flows quite well, but you see a reference site and it doesn't kind of fit. It looks like it's just been dropped in at the last minute, which is probably what has happened. So this idea of parachuting a reference down to get you to a minimum 14 references really doesn't work. You have to read the articles first before you even put pen to paper or finger to keyboard, and think about why you're including that reference or citing that reference in your report. What is it adding? What is it supporting? Or what is it disputing about what you've had to say? Don't cite anything you have not read. It's an amazing number of times that we get tempted. We read in a book that Smith and Jones were quoted as saying something. So you go to the end of the chapter of the book, you find that reference and you simply add it as a citation. Very often what you think you're quoting is actually quite different to what the authors of that article have said. So never, never, never use a paper that you haven't read. Now, we've already mentioned that references can be theoretical or practical in their design or nature, but there's also the issue of what it is about you that you're reading and researching. So for example, are you reading literature that talks about the kinds of skills that leaders need and why they're effective? And that's fine, and find some literature and cite that. Or are you looking at literature that talks about you as a person? Think about you as a demographic thing, and you're chopped up into pieces in terms of your gender, your age, your language, your culture, etc. What does the literature say about those aspects of you, about your demographics? For example, is it important that you are female in terms of your leadership style? Is it important that you've come from a particular culture or background? So there'll be a whole body of literature around those issues. A third group of references or concepts is that of how does leadership develop? So who's writing papers around the kind of evolving nature of leadership skill and how you're tapping into that literature to help guide your leadership plan? One of the key questions that you should be constantly thinking about after having done this course is, does effective leadership result in more effective organizational outcomes? Now, it's, I think, fairly important when you're writing a leadership plan, at least in the back of your mind, you've got this notion that if I'm a better leader, better things will happen. So how do you know that? What does the literature tell you about that? And how can that support, reinforce, or differentiate your report from somebody else's? The final group of ideas or concepts you might want to tap into in literature is those articles that describe tools or processes that you can use to self-assess. So for example, there may be an article that Daniel Goleman's written about emotional intelligence, and you decide that you want to assess your emotional intelligence and have strategies to improve it. So go to that literature, find an article. Again, it's probably quite a practical article that talks about components of emotional intelligence and how to develop them. So all of those elements of the literature are important, and the mix of those really depends on what it is you're trying to develop and how you portray it. Now, in summary, for the written report, the 1400 words, we've talked about what's needed within it in terms of the rubric. We've talked about the kinds of literature that you might tap into to reinforce your arguments, your ideas, and we've talked about citation style and appropriate mixes of content. Now we're going to move on to the 2-minute video presentation, which is submitted alongside your written report. For your 2-minute video, it's just 2 minutes, so it's actually quite short, but it does actually require a lot of pre-planning. What do I want to get across in 2 minutes? Here's a couple of potential strategies to adopt. The first is to say, I'm presenting to my employer and I'm convincing her that I need resources to develop my leadership because I'll then be a more effective leader and the organization will benefit. So pretend it's like a sales pitch to this person. I need to develop the following skills in the following ways in order to do these things more effectively. And the outcome desired is that she says, yes, here's the money, here's the resource, here's the permission. That might work for you. If that doesn't, try a different approach, and that could be a kind of before and after. Here I am now, this is my leadership skill set. I want to be over somewhere else in the future, and I want to have an enhanced skill set. And here is my strategy for getting there, and here's why I think those extra skills will be of benefit. So we've now finished the series of videos. This is part E, and if you want to go back and refresh, you've got part A, B, C, and D also on My RMIT. Remember too to go and talk to your lecturers, because this is the time when you need to be getting your ideas together, refining things, having a sounding board. Go back to the videos, go to your lecturers, make sure you've spoken with your industry advisor, and make sure you submit by the due time and due date, all of which is available in terms of details on My RMIT. And good luck with your report.